By now, you should have read up to the end of Chapter 7 and Among the Hidden. Today, we're going to talk about different types of conflict that we have seen so far in the book Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix. From your flashcards, you may remember that conflict is the problem or struggle in the story that the characters face. And usually, there are going to be several different conflicts that arise during the course of a novel. That's what keeps the story interesting. There is generally an initiating conflict, a problem that starts the story off, and a main or central conflict, and then a series of other smaller conflicts that will occur throughout the plot of the story. Within conflict, there are two major types. One is an internal conflict. Internal conflicts happen inside the character's mind. Often, as readers, we see internal conflict happening when the character is thinking through a problem and trying to decide what to do about it. In literature, we call internal conflicts man versus self conflicts or character versus self conflicts. You'll see different teachers throughout your years in school refer to it either way. External conflicts happen outside of the character's mind and involve someone or something else. Common examples are man versus nature, again, also called character versus nature. And this is when a character faces something in a story that the elements of nature control. That could be like a hurricane or a snowstorm. When a character faces something like that, we call that character versus nature. Another type of external conflict is man versus man, or character versus character. That's when your character in a book has a problem with another character. Those two characters will have to find a way to solve their problem, and that would be, again, another type of external conflict. The third type of external conflict is man, or character, versus society. In this, the main character, or a minor character, is facing a problem against a group of people. That's what society refers to. And among the hidden, we can see that Luke and the government, the ones who are in charge of that population law, are a pretty major conflict so far in the story. And we would call that man versus society, or character versus society. Another type of external conflict is man, or character, versus technology. This would be like, robots came into the story and suddenly started causing trouble. It could be if the character's having problems with a computer or phone, and maybe that ends up being a problem in the story that the character will have to face externally. There are other types of external conflict, like man or character versus supernatural, for example, as we start to get more specific, but these are the major ones. Let's think so far about the conflicts in Among the Hidden. The initiating conflict, or the problem that starts the story off, begins on Chapter 1 right away in page 1. And this is the scene that we did the pulse read on in class the other week. He saw the first tree shudder and fall far off in the distance. Then he heard his mother call out the kitchen window, "Luke, inside, now!" He had never disobeyed the order to hide. Even as a toddler, barely able to walk in the backyard's tall grass, he had somehow understood the fear in his mother's voice. But on this day, the day they began taking the woods away, he hesitated. He took one extra breath of the fresh air, scented with clover and honeysuckle, and, coming from far away, pine smoke. He laid his hoe down gently and savored one last moment of feeling warm soil beneath his bare feet. He reminded himself, "I will never be allowed outside again. Maybe never again, as long as I live." He turned and walked into the house, as silently as a shadow. This scene, and in Chapter 2 on page 11, exemplify what the initiating conflict of the story is. Let's go to page 11 in Chapter 2 and take a look at this scene, and then add these two ideas together to help us figure out what exactly our initiating conflict is. "I always wanted a John, too," she said. "Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John bless the bed that I lie on, but then I thank the Lord that I have you at least. And it's worked out, the hiding, hasn't it? The smile she offered him was wobbly. He felt he had to help her. Yes, he said. And somehow, after that, he didn't mind hiding so much anymore. Who wanted to meet strangers anyway? Who wanted to go to school, where, if Matthew and Mark were to be believed, the teachers yelled, and the other boys would double-cross you if you didn't watch out? He was special. He was secret. He belonged at home. Home, where his mother always let him have the first piece of apple pie, because he was there and the other boys were away. Home, where he could cradle the new baby pigs in the barn, climb the trees at the edge of the woods, throw snowballs at the posts of the clothesline. Home, where the backyard always beckoned, always safe and protected by the house and the barn and the woods, until they took the woods away. So we know that before the book ever started, if Luke was a real person, he had lived a pretty happy life. He had gotten to go outside whenever he wanted, play in the barn whenever he wanted, hang out with his mom, eat apple pie, and he was not unhappy with his lot in life. When the woods got cut away, and we can see that from the text evidence here, and of course at the end of page 11 right there, the woods being cut away really changed how Luke had to live his life. And we would call that the initiating conflict of the story. Because if the woods hadn't been cut down, we wouldn't really have much of a story. That's the problem that starts the book off. But as we keep going in Among the Hidden, we realize that there's also a main or central conflict in the book so far. The main or central conflict is the major problem in the story that is at the center of the plot. This is the issue that the story revolves around throughout the whole entire plot. And that comes up most clearly on chapter 2, page 6 of the book. There was a law against Luke, not him personally, everyone like him, kids who were born after their parents had already had 2 babies. The population law is the main or central conflict of the book. However, in any good book, there's going to be a lot of other conflicts, besides just the initiating one and the main one. Let's think about the conflicts in Among the Hidden so far. There are many other small conflicts that Luke and his family will face throughout the story. Think about the first 7 chapters so far. What other smaller conflicts are you noticing? Go to Teams, and in your ELA 17, you're going to click on our ATH book discussion channel on the left-hand side of your ELA team. Write a post about another conflict that you have noticed so far in the first 7 chapters of the book. If you don't have internet access, write it down on a piece of paper in your notebook and post it on your next day at school. I look forward to hearing about what you think are other conflicts in the book so far.